You're watching the free version of Silhouette Essentials. For projects and footage, head to borisfx.com for the premium download.
Welcome to Class 6, the Beauty Paint class. First, I will start out with a quick demo on how delete and rebuild works for Paint and Silhouette. Then I'll hop into a couple shots and explore a couple different workflows that can help with Beauty Paint. And then the task will be finished off with a variety of techniques. Then lastly, I will show you how to use the Silhouette plugin in Premiere Pro. Let's get started. For this part of the demo, I'm selected on the Paint node here and looking at the Paint History window here. So I'll just make a couple strokes using the color tool here, the color brush. And you can see the strokes in the group in the Paint History window. So if I want to see the stroke, I can click on the stroke here and turn the eyeball on. And same with that one. Or if I want to see what's in this group, I can just click on the group and turn the eyeball on that way, and I can turn that off. If I don't want these paint strokes, I can use Command Z and get rid of them. Or if I make the same strokes again and I don't want them, I can just select the group and click the trash can and rebuild. So that'll rebuild the frame without the paint. Or if I want to just not rebuild the frame, if you have lots of strokes and you don't want any of the paint on the frame at all, you can go down to delete and you can just delete the current frame. And it will delete the paint strokes, and then you can't rebuild after that. But I have nothing else to rebuild. So just keep that in mind. If you have a lot of paint strokes in here, if you delete all the paint for one frame, it won't rebuild. So let's take this a little bit further. So now I'm going to do some auto paint here. I'm going to select one of my tracking layers that I have in the Roto node here. I already did. I'm going to just make one number there, and I'm going to play that across the whole shot. Everything's checked and correct. We'll just play that. And then we'll have another auto paint. And I'll just click on a different color. And we'll go down to 2. We'll select this, and we have our group selected in the Paint History window. And we can play this forward. After you make that paint stroke on the first frame, Silhouette is smart enough not to repaint that frame, so it starts on the frame after that. And then we'll just do one more auto paint, 3. We'll pick a different color. And then we'll select this group and play that forward. So now if I'm painting along and I decide I don't want this 2 in my shot, what I can do is I can just select that and rebuild. If I click on this and I delete this, I can click rebuild, and now it's going to rebuild my shot without the 2. But first it has to go and rebuild everything else before that. So it has to go back and repaint the 1, delete the 2, and then repaint the 3. So just keep this in mind if you have a lot of paint strokes. If you delete something that's not the last thing you painted, you'll still have to go through this rebuild process. And then I should also mention that you can actually name your groups as well. Just double click, and I'll just type 1. And this one would be 3, or whatever you wanted to name it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the rebuild process. Or another way to refer to it is the rebuild feature. So for example, if I have my source here and I've done a little paint on the neck, we'll just zoom in. You can see down here, I've painted out these 3 moles. And everything's great and it looks good. And then down the line, there happens to be a color correction to the original plate. Well, I need to rebuild my paint. So for example, if I bring in my new plate, it's darker, is my paint going to match? So for example, if I click on my source, I'm going to replace my old source with my new source. So here is the original source here. I'm going to go down to my sources window and pick the alternate color plate. I made a little test plate here. I'm going to hold down the Alt Option key. I'm going to drag it into the session here. And when you see the plus button, I'm just going to drop it onto there. So then if I check my paint, Uh-oh, it doesn't look good because it doesn't match the color. Well, what you can do is rebuild it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click this rebuild button. I want to make sure that my frame range is the entire frame range, and then we'll just click rebuild. And you say rebuild. The rebuild feature is a really great feature. The entire paint history is being replayed across the shot automatically, and the paint will match. If I turn on the strokes tool, you can see how many paint strokes were repainted. And you can see them all here in the paint history window. This concludes this little primer on detail and rebuild in the paint node. Next up is the beauty paint demo.